What up players, it's Warboss Tay up in this mode. Welcome back, part 2 of Masterclass, how to paint white on Space Marines or 40k models or even fantasy models, and also as well as, it's not really a how to paint a white scars model because all we do is the white power armor. So today we're going to build up the colors to this white that you see on the bike, on the armor. Oh no, not that, that's the final color we're going for, but like the shoulder pads is a good idea, the front of the bike. So yeah, you're just gonna need the same paints we used before. We're just using more and more ceramite white into the mix, doing a lot of thin layers of the paint to build up the color. And you can see that we're really focusing on leaving shadows in all the recesses there. So hope you guys enjoy it. Let me know what you think before you go. Thanks for watching. Latest players. Hey, alright, we're getting back to painting white. Now look at this nastiness. This is my wet palette that I use from the How to Paint White in my Masterclass. Ooh. So the great thing about doing a wet palette, or a ghetto wet palette in this case, but it also works with a regular wet palette that you use with a parchment paper, and why it's always better if you don't use parchment paper. If you're gonna go the ghetto wet palette route, why you gotta use a paper towel, like something, or a napkin, or a paper towel, but like a napkin from McDonald's or anything would be fine, is because presto changeo, the day after you use it, you just lift it off and boom, your little clamshell there is none the worse for wear, especially if you're going to just be throwing another napkin on. So that's what we're gonna do. I've got another napkin from McDonald's. I'm gonna fold it up, make sure it's kind of like fitted to the shape of the clamshell. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill it up with a little bit of water, throw that baby on, and then we're going to get started with part 2 of how to paint white, or if you're following along with the white scars tutorial, part 3 of how to paint a white scars biker. Alright, so I got my napkin, got my paper towel. Now I got my clamshell with the water in it. So when you put the water in your clamshell, somebody asked me a tip, like how do you know how much water, asked me a question, how do you know how much water to use? If you can see that the water completely fills the bottom and doesn't puddle up too much, then it should be fine. And any excess anyway, you're just going to pour out. So as long as it kind of covers the bottom of the clamshell, that's what I found is the best. I'm just sticking my napkin in right there. Bada bing, bada boom. That's great. It's great. You just stick your napkin in, you pour in some water, you stick in your napkin. It's great. It's made by the Germans, so you know it's good. And then I'm pouring out the excess right there. So, like I said, no puddles. You don't want any puddles. You just want the napkin to be completely soaked and pour out all the excess. So, we're going on, like I said, to the next step of our White Dwarf issue 358, if you're following along at home. And now we're looking at step 3. Oh, sorry, let's get the focus in. Step 3. The miniature was highlighted with a 1-1-2 mix of Space Wolves Gray, Graveyard Earth, and Skull White. So because we don't have those colors anymore, unless you're lucky enough to still have those colors, we're going to be substituting just like we did before with Celestra Gray for Space Wolves, or for Space Wolves Gray, but you can also use Fenrisian Gray as well. For Graveyard Earth, we're using Steel Legion Drab, and for Skull White, we're using the eponymous Ceramite White. And yeah, so I teach at a high school, and I learned today that some of my kids are like, oh, we have to memorize like 40 vocabulary words by tomorrow. And I said, what? So I'm trying to help them out by using vocabulary words that they would use as much as possible. So we're using 2 pieces, or 2 parts Skull White, so 2 pieces Ceramite White. And when they say 2 or 1 or whatever the numbers are, like I said before, you're just mixing, you're just eyeballing it because flippin' GW doesn't believe in dropper bottles. But basically I see 1 part as dipping your brush just about to the ferrule So just about from the tip of the brush to the metal part without getting any of the paint on the actual ferrule itself. There's some vocabulary for you new painters out there. F-E-R-R-U-L-E is the ferrule. It is the part where the bristles meet the metal binding of the brush, and you do not ever want any paint in there. It's gonna dry, like I said in my first video, gonna give you a bad day. You're gonna have to buy another brush, and then your girlfriend will be like, why are you buying so much brushes? I thought you just bought brushes. And then you're gonna have to tell her, because I got paint in the ferrule, and then she's gonna say, the world of Legend of Zelda, and you're gonna say, no, that's Hyrule. And then she's gonna say, the giant Tyrannid construct, and you're gonna have to say, no, that's Hyrule. Anyways, we've got our mixture. So the important thing we're looking for is that the mixture is lighter than before, and putting it on the wet palette or a ghetto wet palette will ensure that it stays nice and smooth and not thick and clumpy. Okay, so I have to mention this. I think I need more ceramite white. I've been getting a lot of comments on a lot of videos, and I'm so sorry I haven't had the chance to answer them yet. I kind of pride myself, I usually do when I'm not too busy, on answering all of my comments, because there was a video that General Splatten made a while back. He's one of the guys that I look up to here on the YouTube, and he mentioned the importance of always taking the time whenever you can. Like, it doesn't have to be as soon as you get it, but always taking the time to respond to your comments, whether they're compliments, questions, or just criticisms. Just respond, even if it's to say thank you for, you know, a compliment and stuff. And I try to write thank yous, little smiley faces, and each comment and compliment I try to take into account. I think it's just, you know, it's the correct thing to do, because people are taking the time to leave comments on your channel. I'm in no way think that I am, you know, the bee's knees when it comes to painting. I feel like I know some things that can help out beginner painters, and I've been in the hobby and spent, Lord knows I spent enough money on the hobby to be able to share some of my own techniques. But, you know, I'm not going to sit here and say that my way is the best way or the only way you can paint models. I just kind of do it for me and to improve my own skills as a painter. Like this, how to paint white, it's a masterclass because that's what it says on the White Dwarf. I don't consider myself like a master painter at all. I think like I said, I'm just a squirrel trying to make it in that cold, cruel world. However that saying goes. Yeah, so I added a little bit more skull white or ceramite white to make this mixture more, to push it up the color scale a little bit. I think, you know, if these paints were in dropper bottles, if I was using the Vallejo equivalent and had dropper bottles to use, then that would be even better. But I think my reasoning for using Games Workshop paints, even though I feel like they've been out long enough, I can kind of review them and comfortably say that I miss my old paints. But the reason why I use GW kind of exclusively is because some people out there don't have access to the, you know, to the other brands of paints. So I try to do Games Workshop products. What's that? Oh. So when you're doing these large flat plates, like I said before, you just want to kind of make your brushstrokes long and kind of know where you're starting, try to start at the edge of whatever you're painting and carry them through to the other side. And I find that doing them in diagonals like this, from like the whatever you would consider like the top diagonal all the way down, is a little bit easier to kind of hide these brushstrokes rather than going straight up and down. I've tried straight up and down brushstrokes before and they tend to not turn out as well, especially since you're following the line of this diagonal, like the metal rim here or this part of the line. I'm just building on what we've already painted. Oh, dang it. Sorry about that. So for here in the center, I painted long ways like that. And don't worry if you get anything on any of the other areas, because all of the other areas were just base coats, yeah? We didn't even wash like the metal areas of lead belcher or anything like that. So we are really just highlighting up the white as carefully as possible. Once you get to like the knee pads, that's when you want to start being selective about how thick your paint is, where we're going to start leaving the shadows. This is where the shadows start coming in. Now with this knee pad, I've had to cut and kind of green stuff. So when I painted this one, I kind of started at the top and went down. Just because that's where the light was hitting. Now, opposite way, because the shadows are at the bottom for knee pads. As for the bottom of the leg armor though, you should actually start at the bottom and feather your paint upwards towards the knee pad, since the shadows would actually be lying closer towards the bottom of the knee pad, if that makes any sense. And then you kind of want to feather it so the brushstrokes disappear near the top. So I don't have too much paint on my brush, and having it on a wet palette also means that it's nice and thinned down a little bit because of the water that's in there. And then we're painting the upper leg armor. You're just kind of hitting the area that's closest to the knee pad. And with the lower leg armor, I'm leaving the shadows on the inner part. I'm leaving the shadows on the inner part of the leg so that, you know, if anybody turns the model, they can see that those shadows are still there. Going on to the tip of the boot now, just kind of sticking towards the rim, as you can see, and trying as hard as I can, as much as possible, not to get any paint on that line between the toe and the armor plate over there. And hitting the rim. When I find myself doing like detail work like this, a good tip I like to pass on is that some people don't like to do it, but I've noticed that for myself, something that helps when I'm doing fine detail work like freehand or painting small little bits like that, like the rim where I have to be very precise, is that I like to take a breath and hold it in while I'm painting, as if I'm kind of, you know, like it kind of, I think it subconsciously makes me steady my hand just a little bit, as long as you don't hold it for, you know, half a minute. It's really for when you're just touching the tip of your brush to whatever it is you're painting. So you can definitely see that the color is getting lighter. We're a lot more capable now of creating some good shadows on your model, especially like if you're using a power fist. If you're using a sword or a power sword or like a plasma gun or something, you can still, for all the white areas, you can still build these areas up where the shadows would happen. So I'm not going to paint down here. I'm only going to paint the areas of the power fist that are facing up towards the light. Actually, one of the things that I almost enjoy doing the most when doing these kinds of slow highlighting work is these individual fingers on the power fist, the power glove, because Nintendo Power Glove, because you can really see the highlights build up on each of the digits of the fingers. And like, especially if you're a new painter or you're not that good, it doesn't matter. Like, you can just build these colors up as long as you have a little bit of patience and some steadiness to your hands. Then you can build these colors up, and it really makes your model look very, very nice. Very nice. So to brace, or to, look at Mr. Oji-san was not happy with me carrying him. To brace my wrists together so that I will not have shaky hands, sometimes I just put the heel of one hand to the heel of the other. Okay, now let's get some focus on the shoulder pads. When doing shoulder pads, what I have found would be the best way to do it, if you're building up a solid color like white, if you're doing blood angels, then red, ultramarines, then blue, something that's a solid color that doesn't have a lot of different, like a different highlight color. For example, an example of that would be like the Alpha Legion, right? They have blue armor, but then they have like green edging to it, so it looks kind of ghostly and otherworldly. If there's a whole different technique to that, but if you want to do just one solid color, for example white, then what I do is I start at the curve here at the center and work my way down. That way you leave the edges to kind of feather in, so that you don't really get into the rim of the shoulder pad until the very end. You can really concentrate with shorter brush strokes, like here. I'm gonna kind of leave the shadows. Just work from the center out. Shoulder pads are some of my favorite things to paint with a brush because you can really see each layer, and you can pull off some really good layered lacquered effects to make the ceramite look in various, depending on which technique you use. You can make the ceramite look shiny, like glossy. You can make it look like just painted on. You could make it look like with the Iron Warriors, you could make it look like it's almost bare metal, painted black with the yellow hazard stripes over. It's also one of the most predominant things on a Space Marine when you look at the model. The shoulder pads stick out to forever. So you can do a lot of great techniques on it to make them look good, and they really focus and draw the eye. That's why like painting on the chapter badge, the chapter symbol, or the, like squad markings, unit markings, like what am I thinking about? The Space Wolves, their blood claws have the red and yellow teeth effect painted on the squad badges. Those things are really prominent when you paint them on the shoulder pad. Okay, if you're using a regular sized hand to hold like the bolter and not like a giant power fist, then when you're painting the highlights on, I like to start at the edges, like here where the knuckles are, and just work my way back. Work from the inside. The digits of the fingers, just like the Power Glove. Nintendo Power Glove. I start from the edges, where the lines are, where the shadows are, and kind of paint my way back in. And if you're not used to, like if you don't know how much paint you have on your brush, it's always good to go with less and have to add more, rather than loading up your brush with paint and then painting it on and then getting it all into the shadows and the crevasses. It's not what you want. Yeah, basically with white, you're just painting, building up many thin coats. So this is just coat number 3, but in the White Dwarf, at this point, like they say every coat takes like many thin layers, and yeah, it's really up to you to determine how smooth you want these color transitions to be. If this was a display piece, like I was doing this for a competition, then obviously I'd be doing more than just what I'm doing, but I'm just showing you how to get from step to step and what the next colors look like. Yeah, white is a hard color to do. Like if I had to say why White Dwarf 358, like when you think about the models done in White Dwarf Masterclasses over the years, the last couple years anyways, you've had, and whenever there's a new model army release, you have the Masterclass that goes with it, like for the Blood Angels. there was the Sanguinor model that got released in a Masterclass. You had, when the Space Wolves were released, you had them paint up a Blood Claw. And they kind of do it at the same time to promote their model ranges, so that people see like, oh, it's easy to paint these models. So the only thing is, when you do an Heavy Metal Masterclass, it's not easy. You have weird, crazy color combinations like this. They make you mix crazy, ratios of paint together that you normally wouldn't have. It takes a lot more time and effort. So I think when they came out with the Corsaro Con video, then they either got complaints or maybe people on staff were like, we're terrifying people with how to paint these white scars. Like, there's got to be an easier way. And when the new flyers came out, I'm thinking that they probably said, let's redo it. Let's do a white scars army and just show them like the simplest, most easiest way to paint up an army and get it out on the table. So boom. Base color, shade, highlight. None of this 2 parts, 1 part, 6 parts. Crazy color mixtures over like 10 coats. Hey, what's up with Twinkies? Twinkies. So sad. Okay, so this next highlight is going to be a 1:1:6 mix of Space Wolves Gray, Graveyard Earth, and Skull White. So pretty much it's saying that is a ridiculous ratio. 1:1:6. It's pretty much saying take this mix that you made and add 3 more even parts of Skull White. I don't know. It's basically saying as Skull White, or as white as you can make it, but still having just a little bit of off-white cream tone to it. The dumb thing about that is that in order to make sure your brush is always fresh when you dip it back into the pot, you gotta wash it off each time. Ah, it's all in the ferrule. Anyways, yeah, here in America, this Hostess company stuff in the news. So sad. I was telling my lady friend, like, I never cared for Twinkies, but you did though, yeah? You used to like Twinkies? Yeah. What did you think about the other stuff? Like, oh, you know what I've never had? I've never had Wonder Bread. Honey, don't be racist on my show. You can say that though because you are Caucasian. Look at that. That's not even. That is like pure white. And I've mixed it in everything. Speaking of white, I guess you just have to really tap it into the colors, the other 2 colors. It looks pretty white to me though. All right. So let's see how it works. We're gonna start with the, I'm actually gonna start with the leg armor. We'll do this coat, then we will cut the video here because I think it's already going to be about like 30 something minutes. I'm trying to keep my tutorials, just to let you guys know, I'm trying to keep my tutorials down to like half-hour chunks, these live tutorials to half-hour chunks approximately, just so that people who have that amount of time to just like sit and work on their hobby and play my rambling and musings in the background are you know, they don't feel like, I don't know, like they're able to do that. For other people, if you just want to see me paint and would rather listen to like your rock and roll death metal music, then you can just put the video on, I guess, and mute it. And then if you see me doing a technique that you're like, oh wait, how do you do that? Then you can like press play and listen to me talk about it. I don't know why you would. Then you get to hear my cool royalty-free Incompetech.com music at the same time. Nope. So in the actual article that we're pulling this from, this step is supposed to be, it says the highlights were then built up. So we're building up the highlights with this next part. I guess this is where it really becomes obvious and evident that everything we painted up to this point was just for a base for this color. So that if this color bleeds through, you see like a nice warm, they call it warm because there's lots of, the pigment is like browns and not blues. Blues are, I guess, considered colder colors. So if you were painting up an army like, say, High Elves, for example, with a lot of white robes, white armor, or maybe not armor, but white robes and white details, then you would paint blue as a base coat, whereas we painted lots of browns as a base coat. And then you see the blues shining through all the cracks and the crevices instead of these brown tones. What? Nothing? I don't know. So, yeah, I'm holding my breath as I get to the foot of the armor here. Every time you re-dip your paintbrush into your paint, you always gotta double check that you have enough for what you need to do. Try not to get more than you need, try not to get less than you need. You always wanna strike the right balance, and that just comes from practice. Some of you might be wondering like why I haven't painted the grenade, the skin, anything else yet, why I'm keeping everything else just on the base coats, and that's because I want to finish the armor first. Okay, so let's do the shoulder pads here. Again, we're starting from the center. We are working our way out. Power Fist is actually a good choice because it's kind of like just painting like a regular glove, Space Marine glove on his armor, but you can really show where the highlights go down each finger, down the plating. I think it's a little bit easier to see when you use the larger scale of the Power Glove. Nintendo Power Glove. I gotta stop calling it that. Power Fist. Power Fist, War Boss. Power Fist. Yeah, so you're just kind of painting the top part, feathering it down, being nice and even. And remember, at this time we've got that nice cream color underneath, so you don't have to paint all of it. You can leave that as the shadow, as the shading. Just kind of build around it so that we see like a natural progression to the white. You don't have to get all the way down into those cracks. That's what she said. Did you learn? Have you been talking to Lewis again, Igor? Yes. He was teaching me how to be a player. Igor, you don't even like women. I love women. I love women fried, kebabbed, stewed, in a nice white wine vinaigrette. Don't laugh at Igor. My lady friend is laughing at Igor. Can possibly be laughing at anything else. Yeah, the reason why we're doing, again, why you really should, if you want to build up your skills or just do a good job and not have your models look like they were rushed through. Even if you're not rushing through, if this is something that you might do unconsciously and then it makes your models look rushed through, even if you take a while to do it. If you do not thin down your paints so that you cannot separate, or so that your, what am I saying? So that the coats look like they were just kind of slopped on. If you don't thin your paints, like in your Ghetto Wet palette or with a paint diluter or like Flow Aid or something like that, if you paint straight out of the pot, as we say, then your paints are going to look really thick and clumpy, and you'll be able to see where the edges of them are on your model, and they're going to do what's called streaking. They're going to streak on your model so that you'll really be able to tell like where the brush strokes are. That is not what you want. I think my goal as a painter has always been to do to learn how to do really smooth blending and transitions, and that's kind of what I want to teach, at least what I know about it. The best way to do that is to start at the ends, work your way inward, and then make sure your paint is thinned down to the point that you do enough brush strokes so that you can't tell that you just slapped paint on in one or two just really quick strokes of the paintbrush. And again, if it looks like if you look at the shoulder pad, it kind of looks like kind of streaky, then streaky icky, then you want to go back in with your paint and just add another layer right across the center. The model can hold as many layers as you want it to, as long as the paints are thinned appropriately. If you are just slapping paint on, oh boy, I've actually picked up some really cheap Black Templar models already built, already quote unquote painted, and they were pretty much like sprayed black primer on with the black primer, just like it looks like somebody held down the button of the black primer and just all the details are just gunked up. And the white armor of the shoulder pads looks like it was not even Games Workshop paint, but like house paint. That's how thick it was painted on. So when you have stuff like that, it's really hard. Like I'm gonna have to go in with some liquid green and strip all that paint off to start over. Basically what I'm saying is be cool and paint so that you don't have to deal with that. Oh, you can really tell how poorly the knee pad is built, but that's okay. See, I'm just repainting over layers that I've already done. Like down there, the belt buckle. I think that's why when your paint is so thin, or not thin, but when your paint is really brought down to this kind of thin consistency, especially with white. Ceramite white, when you take it straight out of the pot, is just so thick. When you bring it down to this consistency to paint with, it spreads really thin and it covers, but you want to keep painting on extra layers so that it doesn't, the parts underneath don't shine through. You would think that the white scars would have changed their armor color at some point, because they ride their motorcycles so much. You'd think that white is a very hard color to keep clean when you're riding your motorcycles. What? That's so funny. And don't worry if you get any of this new highlight paint into the crevices or the recesses. That's totally fine, because any mistakes that we make through that we can easily clean up by applying a shade into the recesses of the armor. I'm going to show you a little bit of how I'm going to be painting the plates of the armor for the bike, and then I'm going to jump ahead to how this guy is going to look once we're finished, and that is going to be all for this video. We only did like 2 steps in the White Dwarf, but I think our model already looks like way cooler. We're starting to see the whites come out. The white colors coming out on the model, and I think by the next step, when we start doing the shading, the contrast, it should look really cool. I've still got for those of you who've been asking and sending private messages and stuff about it, I've still got my Iron Warriors guy ready for a painting tutorial. He's going to be really easy to paint up though, as well as Dr. Festus, the Leech Lord. the Beastman tutorial for fantasy, some Slaanesh tutorials for fantasy, including a Slaanesh unboxing of the new Hell Striders, and all that kind of stuff. So also got some really cool projects in the works. For those of you who don't know, I'm kind of teaming up again with Project One Gaming, and I kind of see myself like allying up with him whenever we can to do a project. And like, I'm not actually you know, employed with, like, I don't get paid for any of these stuff over at Project One Gaming, but anytime I can jump in on a project and we can come up and collaborate with some ideas, put some ideas together, put out some cool content, then I always enjoy doing it. And we've got a great doozy of a pre-heresy project to show you guys coming up pretty soon. So hope you guys stay tuned for that. I'm also in the talks with Chung from Wargame Consortium about possibly doing some collabo videos with him about airbrushing, which quite frankly terrifies me, because I've never had an airbrush. I've never tried it before, and I've always kind of just shied away from it because I've always felt that it was a little too difficult to learn. But I'm going to be possibly learning how to do that with an airbrush, using some paints from Badger actually, as well as practicing with an airbrush that my friend here on YouTube, Kabilis, had mailed me through snail mail, which I'm super thankful for. So I've got a lot of cool projects coming up in the works, and I feel really blessed and grateful to everybody who's supporting my channel, writing comments, subscribing, kind of sharing me on your own YouTube channels, all that kind of stuff. It's very exciting. Alright, I'm going to do some armor plates, and I'll do one right now on the left side, show you how I'm going to work these highlights, and then I'll cut away. So because these armor plates, there's no real recesses, you want to find the most, what you think is going to be the brightest armor plate, the one that's getting the most light, and you want to highlight that up first before you start to work on the other ones. If you can look at a 3D model of like a, you know, like a geometric shape, like a rectangle or a square with 3D, you know, shadows and dimensions and stuff, then you could see that in order to see the different areas, the different sides, when there's no, like when all you have is the edges, and you have to, instead of making the edges stand out as much, you have to make the other panels look a little bit darker or brighter. So we are going to highlight this plate right here. Oh, this works underneath. Then, once this looks all evened out, this main plate here on the side, then we are going to also do this one. We're actually going to leave the lines of the armor plates and not paint those, but paint around them, so that it's like the opposite effect of highlighting the lines. We are highlighting around the lines, and because it's easier to highlight up than shade down, we are going to hit each of the plates. But just not the lines. And then later we're gonna shade the colors down so that we can bring out the shadows. But for now we want to see where are these lines and where should we highlight or shade around? So something like that for now. Okay, so I'm gonna do the rest of this bike right now, and we'll come back to wrap up the video. I think it also kind of adds a little bit more of a artistic cell shading effect for those of you who are familiar with that term. Like if you play Borderlands on console or PC, you can really see the lines. There's not much blending with cell shading animation, I guess. So you have to pick out where the lines are while keeping all of the flat areas kind of even. Okay, so I'll do a little bit more and then we'll come back to wrap up. Alright, so we're going to cut it here. You can see that some of the white is still looks a little bit streaky. Here on the side you can kind of see where the color is bleeding through. So I'm just going to go back with this mixture and just keep applying. Maybe I'll do like maybe another 2 or 3 really thin layers. And the great thing about doing thin layers as well is that you don't have to wait too long for it to dry. But you can kind of see the effect that I'm going for with the reverse highlighting. I have no idea if it's going to work or not, but you could totally see where the separations in the lines are of the plates by looking at by me highlighting everything but the lines, if that makes sense. So this was just one coat, and like I said, maybe 2 or 3 coats per application would be good. And at the end, you always want to do what I call one final go over of the main prominent parts, like the shoulder pads. They'll be completely dry, so you just want to do one last little really thin layer just to even everything out and get the highlights up to as high as you're going. So thanks for watching, everybody. This is part 2 of how to do white. I think after this I might take a little break from doing the white for a while, because this is a perfectly good, I think, white result. You might agree, you might not, but what we do need to do is get back to painting. I think I'll paint at least like the skin and the hair as a base color. The metallics on the backpacks next. It'll be a short how to paint vid on the space or the white scar, just to get a little bit of more color besides just all this whites that we're going to be painting. And then we'll finish up. The next step we're going to do with the painting is pure skull white blended into the previous layers and applied near the edges. So that'll just be like from here on out, it's going to be a lot shorter. Each step is going to take a little bit less because we're going to be highlighting towards you know, doing a lot of highlighting rather than covering everything like covering everything in base coats and stuff. So thanks for watching. Let me know what you think. Is the reverse highlighting idea, do you think that's valid? Do you think it'll work? If not, then let me know as well. What have you found were the best when painting different areas of white that all have to be white like this, but there are large flat areas like the plates on the bike? Let me know what worked for you and what didn't. Thanks for watching. See you all in the next video.